Blood trickled down my cheek, warm and sticky, as the Harvard security guard's grip tightened on my arm, yanking me toward the exit. "You don't belong here, kid," he hissed, his voice low but sharp, cutting through the gasps of the mathematicians around me. "I'm Jada Williams, 9 years old, a black girl from Memphis, Tennessee. And I'd just dared to challenge Dr. Victor Hensley, a Harvard professor who'd called my math impossible." My notebook filled with musical equations for the Riemann hypothesis slipped from my hands, pages fluttering like wounded birds. The crowd parted, some whispering, others staring in shock, but Dr. Hensley's cold smirk burned into me. "No girl from Memphis could solve this," he'd said earlier. His words, a blade I was determined to dull. As the guard dragged me closer to the door, I caught Ms. Evelyn Carter's eye, my teacher, who'd driven me 1,200 miles to this moment. Her face was a storm of fury and pride, and I knew this wasn't the end. Not yet. I've always seen numbers differently, like their notes in a blues song, each one vibrating with a story. Back home in Memphis, living with my Uncle Clarence in a 650-square-foot duplex, I'd spend nights at our wobbly kitchen table, scribbling equations while he hummed old soul tunes. My parents were gone, killed in a hit-and-run when I was 4, a case the police barely investigated, leaving Uncle Clarence, a janitor with a heart bigger than Beale Street, to raise me. He'd say, "Jada, your mind's a gift, but the world ain't kind to girls like you." At Soulsville Elementary, where the roof leaked and the math book stopped at pre-algebra, I hid my talent. The school, serving mostly black kids, got 30% less funding than those in wealthier parts of town, and our principal, Mr. Dorsey, once told me, "Focus on practical skills, Jada. Math won't get you far." But Ms. Carter, my 4th-grade teacher, saw something else. She'd been at Soulsville for 15 years, her classroom a sanctuary of dog-eared textbooks she'd bought herself. When she caught me solving calculus problems during recess, my pencil dancing to an invisible rhythm, she gasped. "Jada, this is college-level work," she said, her voice trembling with hope. She started bringing me advanced books, sneaking them into my backpack like contraband, and I'd read them under my bed with a flashlight, the numbers singing me to sleep. One humid September morning, Miss Carter announced we'd join a Harvard Math Symposium live stream led by Dr. Victor Hensley, a 57-year-old professor whose work on the Riemann hypothesis had made him a legend. The hypothesis, unsolved for over 150 years, was a puzzle that could reshape cryptography and AI, and I felt it calling me like a melody I had to play. Our classroom's old projector flickered as Dr. Hensley's image filled the screen, his tailored suit and sharp gray eyes screaming authority. He spoke of the hypothesis as mathematics' greatest challenge, his voice smooth but edged with arrogance. I sat in the front row, my heart thumping, seeing the primes not as numbers but as chords in a jazz riff, weaving a pattern I could almost hum. When he opened the Q&A, I raised my hand, and Miss Carter, her eyes shining, patched us into the light. "Dr. Hensley," I said, my voice steady despite the butterflies, "what if the primes form a musical sequence in 3D space, not a linear one?" My classmates snickered, but I kept going. "I think the hypothesis resolves if you map it like a chord progression." The Harvard audience went silent, and Hensley's face hardened. "Young lady," he said, his tone icy, "no child from Memphis could grasp the Riemann hypothesis. Save your imagination for music class." Laughter erupted and our audio cut off technical issues, the screen claimed. Miss Carter slammed her fist on the desk. "That was deliberate, Jada," said her voice shaking. "He couldn't handle you." Hensley's dismissal lit a fire in me. I spent the rest of the day refining my solution, my pencil scratching out equations that felt like lyrics to a song only I knew. Miss Carter stayed late, her usual calm replaced by a fierce resolve. "Jada, you're not just smart, revolutionary," she said. "We're going to Harvard." The symposium's reception was that night, a chance to face Hensley in person. Uncle Clarence, when I called him, worried about the risk. "Places like that don't welcome us, Jada," he said, his voice heavy with years of being overlooked. But he heard my determination and sighed. "Go show him what Memphis is made of." Miss Carter got a substitute for her classes, and we hit the road, driving 1,200 miles through the night, my notebook my only companion. I wasn't just carrying my ideas, I was carrying every kid in Memphis who'd been told they weren't enough. The Harvard Math Building was all sharp glass and cold marble, a far cry from Soulsville's sagging walls. My stomach knotted as we neared the reception, where 2 guards stood like sentinels. "Invitation only," one barked, eyeing my worn sneakers and Ms. Carter's faded blouse. I felt small, but Ms. Carter squared her shoulders. "We're here for the Riemann hypothesis reception," she said. Jada Williams was on the live stream. The guard scoffed, but a voice interrupted. "They're my guests," said Dr. Sophia Morales, a Cuban-American professor with a Harvard badge and a warm smile. "I saw the live stream," she whispered. "As we entered, Hensley cut you off because you scared him." The reception hall hummed with mathematicians, their voices a mix of jargon and laughter, sipping sparkling juice like it was a party for kings. In the center, Dr. Hensley held court, his silver hair gleaming as he bragged. "Imagine," he chuckled, a little girl from Memphis, thinking she could solve the Riemann hypothesis. The crowd laughed, and I felt my throat tighten, with fear but with a defiance that burned hot. Dr. Morales leaned in. He's wrong, Jada, prove it. I stepped forward, my notebook shaking in my hands, the crowd's eyes like spotlights. Dr. Hensley, I said, loud enough to silence the room. I've got a solution to the Riemann hypothesis. Can I share it? His smile was a thin blade. Bold, he said, like I was a child playing dress-up, but this is for professionals. Maybe try again when you're grown. The laughter stung, but I pressed on. I'm ready now, I said, my voice firm. Dr. Morales spoke up. Give her a chance, Victor. Genius doesn't wait for age. The crowd murmured, curious, and Hensley, trapped by their gaze, waved at a whiteboard. Go ahead, he sneered. Amuse us. I grabbed a marker, my mind a whirlwind of music and math. I sketched the hypothesis's core equation, then layered it with my musical notation, explaining how the primes moved like a 3D blues scale, resolving the paradox Hensley called unsolvable. The room hushed. His interruptions, that's nonsense, growing weaker as professors leaned closer, some scribbling notes. For 30 minutes I let the numbers sing, my voice steady, until the board held a framework that felt alive. I stepped back, breathless, the silence deafening. Hensley's face twisted with rage. This is fraud, he roared, pointing at me. No black girl from Memphis could do this. Who coached you? The word fraud hit like a slap. But I stood tall. I did it myself, I said, staring him down. Math doesn't care who I am. Ms. Carter stepped forward, her voice shaking with anger. You're dismissing her because of your own prejudice. Victor, the crowd buzzed, some nodding, others shocked. Dr. Morales moved beside me. Her work is brilliant, and you know it. Hensley's eyes flashed with something darker, fear, maybe, or hatred. Security, he shouted. Remove this child. A guard grabbed my arm, his grip bruising, and as he pulled me toward the exit, my elbow scraped the wall, blood welling up. The room erupted, professors shouting, Dr. Morales blocking the guards. Dean Patricia Howell stormed in, her presence commanding. Stop this now, she snapped. Victor, this is unacceptable. We'll review Jada's work fairly. She turned to me, her eyes kind but firm. You've done enough for tonight, Jada. We'll take it from here. Ms. Carter pulled me close, her hands trembling, and I felt a surge of pride mixed with dread. I'd faced the villain and won a battle, but his rage told me he wouldn't stop. That as we left the hall, my heart still racing, I noticed a strange weight in my backpack. In the hotel later I found it a USB drive, unlabeled, tucked into a side pocket. My hands shook as I held it, a chill running through me. Project Enigma, it read in faint marker. I didn't know what it meant, but it felt like a threat, like someone had been close enough to slip it in without me noticing. Ms. Carter called Uncle Clarence, her voice tight as she told him about Hensley's outburst and the blood on my cheek. They can't break you, Jada, Uncle Clarence said, his voice fierce, but be careful. Lying in bed, my notebook open, the blues of the Riemann hypothesis still playing in my mind. I knew I'd stirred something bigger than math. Hatred wasn't just personal, it was a wall built to keep kids like me out, and that USB drive. It was a whisper of something dangerous, a sign that my fight was about to get harder. I stood in the Harvard reception hall, my heart pounding like a drum on Beale Street, the sting of the scrape on my cheek still fresh from the guard's rough grip. Dr. Victor Hensley's accusation of fraud echoed in my ears, his words of venom, meant to poison my truth. I'm Jada Williams, 9 years old, a black girl from Memphis, Tennessee, and I'd just laid my soul bare on that whiteboard, my musical equations for the Riemann hypothesis singing a truth he refused to hear. The room buzzed with tension, mathematicians whispering, some with awe, others with doubt, but Ms. Evelyn Carter, my fourth-grade teacher, stood beside me, her hand on my shoulder like an anchor. Dr. Sophia Morales, the Cuban-American professor, who'd gotten us in, faced Hensley with fire in her eyes, her voice cutting through the chaos. You're scared, Victor, she said, because Jada's brilliance threatens your world. Hensley's smirk faltered, but his gray eyes burned, with a hatred I felt in my bones. I clutched my notebook, its pages my shield, knowing I'd stirred something dangerous. The USB drive I'd found in my backpack, marked Project Enigma, weighed heavy in my mind, a secret I hadn't shared yet, not even with Ms. Carter. I was a kid from Soulsville Elementary, but I wasn't invisible anymore, and that made me a target. Back at the hotel, Ms. Carter paced our small room, her usual calm frayed by fury. Hensley's wrong, Jada, she said, her voice low but fierce. He attacked you because you're a black girl who outsmarted him. I sat on the lumpy bed, my notebook open, trying to focus on the bluesy rhythm of the primes, but Hensley's words kept intruding. No girl from Memphis. They weren't just about me, they were about every kid in my neighborhood. Dismissed, before we could even try. Miss Carter called Uncle Clarence, words tumbling out as she described the confrontation, my bloodied cheek, and the crowd's reaction. They saw her genius, Clarence, she said, but Hensley's trying to bury it. Uncle Clarence's voice crackled through the phone, steady but laced with worry. Jada, you're stronger than they know, but folks like Hensley don't play fair. Watch your back. I nodded, though he couldn't see me, my fingers tracing the USB drive hidden in my pocket. I hadn't told Miss Carter about it. Not because I didn't trust her, but because I needed to understand it first. The label Project Enigma felt like a riddle, and I was good at riddles. The next morning, Miss Carter decided we'd stay in Cambridge another day. "We're not running from this," she said, her eyes fierce. "Dean Howell promised a review of your work, and we're holding her to it." I felt a mix of pride and dread. Pride that my equations had sparked something, dread that Hensley's rage would follow me. We headed to a local library, a quiet place to regroup, its shelves towering like the ones back in Memphis where I'd first taught myself calculus. Miss Carter pulled out her laptop, emailing colleagues to rally support, while I opened my notebook sketching new layers to my solution. The Riemann hypothesis wasn't just a math problem anymore, which was a song I had to finish, a melody to prove I belonged. But as I worked, I kept glancing at my backpack, the USB drive a silent question. I slipped away to a library computer, my heart racing, and plugged it in, holding my breath. The screen flashed with classified files, diagrams of quantum encryption, memos about Project Enigma, and a note: Williams' framework could unlock global systems. My name, my math. I yanked the drive out, my hands shaking. Someone knew what I'd done, and they'd been close enough to plant this in my bag. Back at the hotel, I told Miss Carter everything, my voice trembling as I showed her the drive. Her face paled, but her jaw set firm. "This is bigger than Harvard. Jada," she said. "Your solution isn't just math, it's power." She called Dr. Morales, who arrived within the hour, her warm smile replaced by a steely resolve. "I've seen this before," Dr. Morales said, examining the drive without plugging it in. "The government's been sniffing around mathematical prodigies for years, especially minorities they think they can control." She explained how her own work in cryptography had drawn similar attention, forcing her to build a network of allies to protect herself. "Hensley's not just a professor," she added. "He consults for agencies that would kill to own your math." I felt a chill, not just for me but for Uncle Clarence. Alone in Memphis, unaware of the storm I'd stirred, Dr. Morales promised to secure the drive and investigate, but her warning stuck with me. "Be careful who you trust, Jada. Hensley's ego is his weakness, but it makes him dangerous." The review session was set for that afternoon in a Harvard conference room, a sleek space with mahogany tables and windows overlooking campus. I wore my best jeans, feeling small at 4 feet 8 inches and 75 pounds, but my notebook gave me courage. Dean Howell greeted us, her silver hair pulled back, her demeanor calm but authoritative. "Jada, your presentation last night was remarkable," she said. "We're here to evaluate it fairly." The room held a dozen mathematicians, including Dr. Morales and a reluctant Dr. Hensley, whose presence made my skin crawl. His tailored suit couldn't hide the venom in his stare, and I wondered what deals he'd made to be here after last night's outburst. Miss Carter sat beside me, her hand brushing mine, a silent promise she wouldn't let me face this alone. I took a deep breath, the blues of the primes humming in my mind, and began. I explained my musical approach, projecting my notations on a screen, showing how the primes danced in 3D space, resolving the hypothesis's paradox. The professors leaned forward, some nodding, others asking sharp questions I answered with ease, the melody guiding me. Dr. Morales beamed, her notes piling up, but Hensley's interruptions grew sharper. "This notation is childish," he snapped, his voice a blade. "It's a gimmick, not mathematics." I felt my cheeks burn, but I kept going, my voice steady. "It's not a gimmick," I said. "It's how I see the truth." Halfway through, a new professor, Dr. Naomi Chen, an Asian-American cryptographer, spoke up. "Jada's framework aligns with quantum probability models I've studied," she said, her tone measured but firm. "It's unorthodox, but it works." The room shifted, Hensley's allies glancing at each other, unsettled. I caught a flicker of fear in his eyes, quickly masked by a sneer. "She's been coached," he insisted, pointing at Ms. Carter. "This is a stunt to push diversity quotas." The accusation stung, but Ms. Carter's voice cut through. "Jada's work is her own. Victor, your bias is the only stunt here." Dean Howell raised a hand, silencing the room. "Enough," she said. "Jada, finish your presentation." I did, pouring every ounce of my heart into the final equations. The primes singing a climax that felt like a Memphis blues finale. When I stepped back, the silence was electric, broken by Dr. Chen's quiet applause, joined by others. Hensley sat rigid, his face a mask of barely contained rage, as the session ended. Dean Howell promised a formal evaluation, but Hensley cornered me near the door, his voice low and venomous. "You think you've won, little girl," he hissed. "You're a pawn in a game you can't understand." His words chilled me, not just for their hatred but for the truth they hinted at. The USB drive, Project Enigma, was all connected, and Hensley knew more than he let on. Miss Carter pulled me away, her eyes blazing, but I saw two strangers in suits lingering outside watching us. They didn't approach, but their presence, it felt like a shadow, confirming Dr. Moreles's warning. Back at the hotel, Uncle Clarence called, his voice tight. "Jada, something's wrong," he said. "I've been getting dizzy spells, and the doctor can't figure it out." My heart sank, the memory of the USB drive flashing in my mind. Was this Hensley's doing, or something bigger? I told Ms. Carter, who exchanged a grim look with Dr. Morales, now our constant ally. "We need to get Clarence to a specialist," Dr. Morales said. "And we need to protect you, Jada. Your math is a weapon now." That night, I couldn't sleep. The Prime's melody, drowned out by fear for Uncle Clarence. I thought of Hensley, his polished exterior hiding a man who'd rather destroy me than admit I was right. His hatred wasn't just personal, it was a wall built by a system that valued his credentials over my truth. But I wasn't alone. Ms. Carter, risking her job, had driven me to this fight. Dr. Morales, a trailblazer who'd faced her own battles, saw me as more than a prodigy. She saw a future. And Uncle Clarence, my rock, believed in me even when the world didn't. I opened my notebook, sketching a new idea, a way to share my math safely. Maybe through a music app for kids, letting others hear the primes like I did. It was a spark of hope, a way to keep my gift alive without letting it be stolen. But as I worked, I heard a faint click outside our hotel window, a camera, maybe, or something worse. I froze, the USB drive's weight heavier than ever. Hensley's game was growing darker, and I was running out of time to play my next note. I stood outside Harvard's math building, the cold Cambridge air biting at the bandage on my cheek where the guard's grip had left its mark. My name is Jada Williams, 9 years old, a black girl from Memphis, Tennessee, and I'd just shaken a world that didn't want me in it. My musical solution to the Riemann hypothesis had silenced a room of mathematicians. But Dr. Victor Hensley's venomous words, fraud, no girl from Memphis, still rang in my ears. Each one a note in a discord I couldn't tune out. Ms. Evelyn Carter, my teacher who'd driven 1,200 miles to get me here, held my hand tightly, her eyes scanning the crowd as if expecting trouble. Dr. Sophia Morales, my ally and a Cuban-American professor, walked beside us, her leather portfolio clutched like a weapon. The USB drive in my pocket, labeled Project Enigma, felt heavier than ever. Its classified files, tying my math to something dangerous: quantum encryption, global systems, power I didn't fully understand. Uncle Clarence's dizzy spells, now worsening back in Memphis, haunted me, a shadow that felt too close to the drive's secrets. As we headed to a meeting with Dean Patricia Howell to review my work, I saw two men in suits lingering near a black sedan, their eyes locked on me. My heart raced, but the blues of the primes still sang in my mind, urging me to keep playing my song. The meeting room was stark, all polished wood and glass, a far cry from Soulsville Elementary's leaky ceilings. Dean Howell greeted us with a calm that felt like a shield, her silver hair gleaming under the fluorescent lights. "Jada, your presentation was extraordinary," she said, her voice steady but warm. "We're here to give it the respect it deserves." Around the table sat a mix of professors, including Dr. Naomi Chen, the cryptographer who'd backed me yesterday. And, to my dismay, Dr. Hensley, his gray eyes cold as steel. His presence made my stomach twist, his tailored suit a mask for the hatred I'd seen last night when he'd called for security to drag me out. Miss Carter sat close, her hand brushing mine, while Dr. Morales opened her portfolio ready to fight. I was 4 feet 8 inches and 75 pounds, a kid in a room of giants, but my notebook was my strength, its pages alive with the music of math. Dean Howell asked me to explain my approach again, and I stood, my voice trembling at first but growing steady as I spoke. I projected my musical notations, showing how the primes moved like a 3D blues riff, resolving the hypothesis's paradox through rhythm and space. The professors leaned in, some scribbling, others nodding, but Hensley's interruptions cut like knives. "This is a fantasy," he snapped, his voice dripping with scorn. "She's mimicking advanced concepts she can't possibly understand." I felt my cheeks burn, but I kept going, the prime's melody guiding me. Each note a defiance of his doubt. Dr. Chen spoke up, her tone sharp but measured. "Victor, Jada's framework mirrors quantum models I've studied for years. It's not mimicry, it's innovation." Her support felt like a chord resolving, but Hensley's face darkened, his fingers drumming the table, a nervous tick that betrayed his composure. I caught a glance between him and a professor I didn't know, a quick nod that felt wrong, like a secret I wasn't meant to see. Dr. Morales noticed too, her eyes narrowing as she jotted a note. I finished my presentation, my heart pounding, and sat down, the room buzzing with debate. Some professors praised my approach, calling it revolutionary, while others, swayed by Hensley, questioned my credibility. "She's 9. One said, not unkindly but with doubt. "How could she develop this alone?" Miss Carter's voice cracked with anger. "Because she's brilliant, and you're too blinded by bias to see it." Dean Howell raised a hand, her authority silencing. "The room will need time to evaluate," she said. "Jada, you've given us much to consider." But as we left, Hensley's stare followed me, his smirk a promise of trouble, and I knew he wasn't done fighting. Outside, Dr. Morales pulled us aside, her voice low. Jada Hensley's not just a professor, he's tied to government projects. That USB drive proves it. She'd sent the drive to a trusted colleague for analysis, confirming it held classified memos about Project Enigma, a program to control quantum encryption for global systems, my math at its core. They want your work, she said, and they'll do anything to get it. My mind flashed to Uncle Clarence, his dizzy spells now so bad he could barely stand. I'd called him that morning, his voice weak but fierce. Don't let them scare you, Jada, he'd said. You're Memphis strong. But fear gnawed at me, not for myself, but for him. Miss Carter's face was grim as she listened, her usual optimism replaced by a steely resolve. We need to get Clarence to a specialist, she said, and we need to protect Jada's work. Dr. Morales nodded, suggesting we return to Memphis to regroup. But before we could plan, two men approached Agents Kessler and Monroe, their badges gleaming like warnings. Miss Williams, Kessler said, his voice smooth but cold, we need to discuss your discovery. It's a matter of national security. My heart sank. The USB drives weighed a reminder of the stakes. We were escorted to a nondescript office in Cambridge, its plain exterior hiding high-tech security, keycard locks, a hum of surveillance. Inside, Agents Kessler and Monroe sat across from us, their suits as stiff as their expressions. Your solution, Jada Monroe began, could unlock systems protecting everything from nuclear codes to bank networks. I swallowed hard, the prime's melody fading under their words. They knew about my math, my notebook, my life. We're offering you an opportunity, Kessler added, sliding a folder across the table. It outlined a research role in a secure facility, with funding for Uncle Clarence's care and a salary that could change our lives. But the catch was clear. I'd work under Dr. Hensley, my ideas credited to him, my contact with the outside world limited. Miss Carter's hand tightened on mine, her voice sharp. This is exploitation, not opportunity. Dr. Morales leaned forward, her portfolio open. I've seen this before, she said. Your agency has a history of targeting minority prodigies, taking their work and giving them scraps. She cited cases, names, dates, stolen discoveries, her voice steady but burning. The agents exchanged glances, their calm cracking, and I saw Hensley's shadow in their plan, his ego pulling strings I couldn't yet see. I spoke up, my voice small but firm. I won't work for you if it means hiding my truth. The words surprised even me, but they felt right, like hitting the perfect note. Kessler's smile was thin, almost predatory. You're a child, Jada. You don't understand the consequences of refusing. The threat hung heavy, and I thought of Uncle Clarence. Alone, sick, vulnerable. Dr. Morales stood, her presence commanding. She's not alone, she said, and I've already contacted allies who make sure her work stays hers. The agents didn't flinch, but their silence spoke volumes. As we left, I felt their eyes on me, and I knew Hensley was behind this, his hatred now a weapon wielded by men with more power than he'd ever had alone. Back in Memphis, Uncle Clarence met us at the airport, his face pale, his steps unsteady. I'm proud of you, Jada, he said, pulling me into a hug, but his weakness scared me more than Hensley's words. At home, I found a flyer slipped under Ardora Community Rally for Soulsville Kids, organized by local musicians to support my fight. It was a spark of hope. But that night, I heard another click outside our window, a camera shutter or something worse. I clutched my notebook. The Prime's blues now abattled them. The rally was the next day, held in a park near Beale Street, where musicians played soulful tunes and neighbors held signs. Jada's Truth Matters. I stood on a makeshift stage, my voice shaking as I shared my story, the crowd's cheers drowning out my fear. Miss Carter and Dr. Morales flanked me, their presence a shield. But I saw those same suited men watching from the edge, their faces blank but menacing. Uncle Clarence, too weak to stand long, watched from a chair, his eyes shining with pride. I announced a new idea: music math workshop for kids like me, using rhythm to teach equations, a way to share my gifts without losing it. The crowd roared, but Hensley's shadow loomed in my mind, his connections to the agents a puzzle I hadn't solved. Dr. Morales later told me she'd traced the USB drive to a government contractor linked to Hensley, confirming he was no mere professor but a gatekeeper for those who wanted my math for power, not progress. As the rally ended, a text came from an unknown number: "Stop now, or Clarence pays." My heart stopped, the Prime's melody drowned by fear. Hensley wasn't just fighting me, he was waging war, and I was running out of moves. I clutched my notebook, the pages filled with the bluesy rhythm of the Riemann hypothesis, as the Memphis evening air hummed with the echoes of the Beale Street rally. I'm Jada Williams, 9 years old, a black girl from Soulsville, and the world was closing in. The threatening text, "Stop now, or Clarence pays," burned in my mind. Each word a dissonant chord that drowned out the Prime's melody. Uncle Clarence's dizzy spells had worsened, his face pale as he rested in our duplex. And I couldn't shake the fear that the USB drive marked Project Enigma was tied to his illness. Dr. Victor Hensley, the Harvard professor who'd called my math fraud, wasn't just a bully, he was a puppet master. His strings reaching into the government agents who'd cornered me in Cambridge. Miss Evelyn Carter, my teacher who'd risked everything to get me here, paced our living room, her eyes fierce but tired. Dr. Sofia Morales, my ally and a Cuban-American professor, was on the phone, rallying her network to protect my work. The rally had lit a spark. In Memphis, with neighbors chanting Jada's truth matters, but the suited Menagins, Kessler and Monroe watching from the crowd reminded me this fight was far from over. I'd announced my music math workshop for kids, a dream to share my gift, but now, with Uncle Clarence's life on the line, I needed a plan bigger than hope. The next morning, Miss Carter drove me to Soulsville Elementary, where the rally's energy lingered in posters taped to the school's cracked walls. My classmates, once skeptical, now looked at me like I was a hero, their whispers a mix of awe and envy. But I felt like a target. The USB drive hidden in my backpack, a ticking bomb. Dr. Morales had sent it to a secure lab for analysis, but her warning echoed, "Hensley's not acting alone, Jada. He's a front for people who want your math for power." I sat in Miss Carter's classroom, pretending to focus on fractions, but my mind was composing a new song, a way to fight back. I'd started sketching a plan for Melody of Truth, a digital platform to share my equations openly, using music to make math accessible to kids like me. It was risky, but if I could get my work out before Hensley or the agents claimed it, I could protect it. Miss Carter noticed my distraction and pulled me aside at lunch. "Jada, you're carrying too much," she said, her voice soft but firm. "Let us help." I wanted to tell her about the text, the fear gnawing at me, but I held back, afraid it would break her. Instead, I nodded, promising to share more soon. That afternoon, Dr. Morales arrived in Memphis, her presence a lifeline. She took us to a community center near Beale Street, where local musicians and activists had gathered to plan the music math workshop. The room buzzed with energy gators strumming, voices debating how to fund laptops for kids. I felt a flicker of hope, seeing my city rally around me, but Dr. Morales's face was grim as she pulled me and Miss Carter aside. "The USB drives, contents are worse than we thought," she whispered. "Project Enigma isn't just about encryption, it's about controlling global data networks, from banks to elections. Your math, Jada, could give them that control." My heart sank. The prime's melody faltering. She showed us an encrypted report her colleague had decoded, linking Hensley to a shadowy contractor, Apex Dynamics, funded by government grants. Hensley wasn't just stealing credit, he was delivering my work to people who saw me as a tool, not a person. "And Clarence's illness," Dr. Morales added, her voice tight. "The lab found traces of a rare compound in his blood, something experimental, not on the market." I gasped, the threatening text flashing in my mind. They were poisoning Uncle Clarence to force my hand. I wanted to scream, to run to Uncle Clarence, but Dr. Morales held my gaze. "We fight smart, Jada," she said. "I've got a plan, Melody, of truth, but bigger." She explained her idea, a global live stream not just of my workshop but of my full Riemann solution, broadcast through her network of minority mathematicians. It would expose Hensley and Apex Dynamics, proving my work was mine, but it was dangerous. Going public could make me a bigger target. Miss Carter hugged me, her eyes wet. "You don't have to do this alone," she said, "but I know you can." I thought of Uncle Clarence, his weak smile, his belief in me. I nodded, my voice steady. "Let's do it." That night, we worked in secret at the community center, coding the livestream with help from a local hacker, Tasha, a black woman who'd once been a tech prodigy herself. Tasha's fingers flew over her laptop, her grin fierce. "They won't see this coming, Jada," she said. "We're gonna make your math sing to the world." I felt a surge of pride, but the fear lingered. Hensley's reach, the agent's threats, Uncle Clarence's fading strength. The next day, Uncle Clarence was rushed to the hospital, his dizziness turning to fainting spells. I sat by his bed, holding his hand, his calloused fingers weak in mine. "You're my fighter, Jada," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Don't let them take your song." Tears stung my eyes, but I promised him I wouldn't. Miss Carter stayed with us, her face a mask of guilt and resolve, blaming herself for dragging me into this. Dr. Morales arrived, her portfolio now a war chest of evidence, emails, memos, proof of Apex Dynamics ties to Hensley and the government. She'd contacted a journalist, Maya Reed from a Memphis paper, who'd exposed corruption before. Maya met us at the hospital, her recorder ready. "Jada, your story's bigger than math," she said. "It's about who gets to shine." I told her everything: Hensley's dismissal, the USB drive, the threats, Clarence's illness. Her eyes widened, but she nodded, promising to amplify my voice. As we spoke, I saw a nurse linger too long near Uncle Clarence's fore, her badge from a private clinic I didn't recognize. My heart raced. Another move in Hensley's game. The livestream dubbed Melody of Truth was set for the next evening at the community center. Tasha had secured servers across 5 continents, making it unstoppable. I spent the day preparing, my notebook now a script, blending my equations with music to show the world what I've done. The prime sang louder, a battle hymn against Hensley's lies. But as the hour approached, Agents Kessler and Monroe appeared at the community center, their suits stark against the colorful murals. Jada, Kessler said, his voice smooth but menacing. You're playing a dangerous game. Stop this, or your uncle's care gets complicated. My stomach twisted, but Ms. Carter stepped forward, her voice like steel. You don't scare us, she said. This is Memphis, we protect our own. The crowd, musicians and neighbors, closed ranks. Around me, their defiance a chorus of strength. Dr. Morales whispered, We're ready, Jada, let's go. I nodded, my heart pounding, and we launched the live stream. The screen lit up with my face, a pre-recorded video Tasha had edited, my voice clear as I explained the Riemann hypothesis through music, showing how the primes danced in 3D. Name is Jada Williams, I said, and they said a black girl from Memphis couldn't do this. They're wrong. The stream went viral. Hashtag JADA shines trending with 5 million views in hours. I shared Hensley's accusations, the USB drive secrets, and Apex Dynamics' plan to weaponize my math. Dr. Morales' network chimed in, mathematicians from Tokyo to Johannesburg presenting my framework, proving it was mine. Back in the community center, the crowd cheered, but I saw Kessler and Monroe slip away, their faces grim. I knew they'd report to Hensley, whose rage would only grow. That night, Maya's article hit the Memphis paper's website, headlined, Child Prodigy Exposes Harvard's Bias, sparking outrage across X and local news. But at the hospital, Uncle Clarence's monitor beeped erratically, and a doctor pulled us aside. We found another compound, she said. It's deliberate. My knees buckled, Ms. Carter catching me as Dr. Morales' face hardened. Hensley wasn't just stealing, he was attacking my family. As the live stream's impact grew, protests erupted outside Apex Dynamics' local office, musicians playing blues in solidarity. I felt a mix of triumph and terror. Triumph that my truth was out. Terror that Uncle Clarence was paying the price. Dr. Morales revealed she'd sent evidence to the ACLU, demanding an investigation into Apex and Hensley. But late that night, alone in our duplex, I found a new note slipped under the door. You can't hide, Jada. My hands shook, the prime's melody now a desperate plea. Hensley's war was escalating, and I was a 9-year-old girl against a machine. But Memphis was behind me, Ms. Carter's faith unyielding, Dr. Morales' network unstoppable. I opened my notebook, sketching a new equation not for math, but for justice. A rhythm to protect Uncle Clarence and my truth. The fight was bigger than me now, and I wasn't backing down. I stood on the stage of the National Academy of Sciences in Washington, D.C., my heart beating like a Memphis blues riff, the weight of the moment heavier than the faded bandage on my cheek. A reminder of that night at Harvard when a guard's grip marked my defiance. I'm Jada Williams, 10 years old now, a black girl from Soulsville, and I'd turned a world that doubted me into one that listened. My musical solution to the Riemann hypothesis had shattered barriers, exposing Dr. Victor Hensley's racism and Apex Dynamics' plot to steal my math for global control. The Melody of Truth live stream, with its 5 million views and hashtag JADA shines trending, had forced their hand, bringing justice for me and others they'd silenced. Ms. Evelyn Carter, my teacher who'd driven 1,200 miles to champion me, stood in the audience, her eyes glistening with pride. Dr. Sophia Morales, my Cuban-American ally, clutched her portfolio, now a symbol of our shared victory. Uncle Clarence, still frail but recovering, watched from a wheelchair, his smile my strength. The prime's melody sang in my mind, no longer a cry for battle but a song of hope. As the president prepared to place the National Medal of Science around my neck, I knew this wasn't just about math, it was about proving that a girl from Memphis could change the world. The weeks after the livestream had been a storm of change. Memphis had risen up, musicians playing soulful tunes outside Apex Dynamics' office, their signs reading Jada's Truth Matters. Maya Reid's article, first in the Memphis paper, had exploded nationally, with the Washington Post declaring child prodigy defies scientific racism. The ACLU, armed with Dr. Morales' evidence, launched lawsuits against Apex and its government ties, uncovering a pattern of exploiting minority prodigies. 7 others whose brilliance had been buried. Agents Kessler and Monroe, those shadowed men in suits, had disappeared, their agency now under congressional investigation. Dr. Hensley, the Harvard professor whose venom had fueled this fight, was the storm's center. His polished exterior had hidden a man who'd orchestrated Uncle Clarence's poisoning using an experimental compound to pressure me. Dr. Morales' network exposed his emails to Apex, proving he'd planned to claim my math as his own. His resignation was swift, followed by a flight to a non-extradition country. But the ACLU's push for international sanctions ensured he'd never escape the truth. His defeat was my first note of triumph, but it came with a lingering like Hensley always left echoes. Uncle Clarence's recovery was my heart's victory. Independent doctors, funded by a crowd-funded campaign sparked by the livestream, traced the toxin in his blood to Apex's labs. Treatment began, and though his steps were slow, his laughter filled our 650-square-foot duplex again. You're my warrior, Jada, he said, his hand warm in mine. but the shadows in his eyes told of sleepless nights, a trauma I'd unintentionally brought to Miss Carter. Reinstated at Soulsville Elementary after protests forced the school board's hand, carried her own scars. She'd faced suspension for taking me to Harvard, but her faith never wavered. "You're my reason to keep teaching," she told me, her voice thick with emotion. Dr. Morales, now a national advocate, worked tirelessly, her network ensuring my math stayed mine. She'd found records of those 7 prodigies, their stories, eerily like mine, and was fighting for their recognition. "You've opened doors, Jada," she said, "not just for you, but for them." Her words fueled my resolve to turn my gift into a legacy. That legacy became the Williams Math Harmony Foundation, my dream to lift kids like me, funded by Apex's settlement. It launched music math workshops in underserved schools across Memphis, Detroit, and Baltimore. I crafted the lessons, blending rhythm and equations to make math a song for kids told they couldn't sing. At our first workshop in a Soulsville community center, I watched a girl named Aisha solve a geometry problem by tapping it like a drumbeat, her grin mirroring mine. The foundation was more than math, it was a promise that no child's light would be dimmed by neglect. Miss Carter led as educational director, training teachers to spot genius in unexpected places. Dr. Morales guided the academic side, linking our work to universities. The foundation's Beale Street Math Festival, planned for next summer, drew national sponsors, with PBS filming a documentary, Jada Song, to share our mission. I'd also begun a new project using my musical math to model emotional patterns, a tool for therapy to help kids process trauma. Watching Aisha laugh as she sang equations, I felt my purpose solidified. That negotiations in D.C. had sealed our victory. In a secure room, Dr. Evelyn Brooks, the president's science advisor, faced me, her voice earnest. "Jada, your math is a game changer," she said. "We need a path forward." At 4 feet 9 inches and 80 pounds, I felt small, but my conditions were firm. Uncle Clarence's ongoing care with trusted doctors, a full investigation into Hensley and Apex, ethical use of my math for humanity, and justice for the other prodigies. Dr. Morales, my advocate, presented our evidence, her voice unyielding. "This is about equity," she said. "Jada's work belongs to the world, not a corporation." Dr. Brooks agreed to a public-private partnership with university oversight to ensure ethics. A trust fund secured my future, but I cared more about the congressional review promised. For those other prodigies, their names now spoken: Mara, Javier, Lynn, and more. The agreement was a chord resolving a melody of justice. Hensley's fall was the sweetest note. His emails, exposed by Dr. Morales, confirmed his role in Clarence's poisoning, a desperate bid to control me. His flight abroad was a coward's move, but the sanctions ensured he'd live in exile. His legacy tarnished. My math, once a weapon, now transformed lives. In medicine, it accelerated cancer research, modeling cellular growth with precision. In climate science, it predicted storms, saving communities like mine from floods. In AI, it set ethical standards, ensuring technology uplifted, not oppressed. My emotional mapping project grew, with therapists testing it to help kids like Aisha heal. The foundation's workshops spread, each one a note in a growing symphony. At the D.C. ceremony, as the president placed the national medal around my neck, the youngest recipient ever, the audience stood, their applause a wave of belief. Uncle Clarence, Miss Carter, and Dr. Morales beamed, their presence my strength. I stepped to the podium, my voice steady. "Math doesn't care about your skin or your street," I said, the prime's melody soaring. "I'm a black girl from Memphis, and I solved the impossible, but this is for every kid told they can't. My math heals, predicts, connects, it's for us all. Let's make sure every genius gets to sing." As the applause thundered, I thought back to that night at Harvard, Hensley's sneer, the guard's grip, the USB drive's threat. I'd been a 9-year-old girl, scared but stubborn, my bluesy math a shield against a world that doubted me. I learned that genius lives everywhere, but bias builds walls to hide it. Miss Carter taught me that one ally can change everything, risking her job to lift me up. Dr. Morales showed me strategy, turning my fight into a movement. Uncle Clarence gave me love, his strength, my reason to keep going. I learned that racism isn't just words, it's systems, like Apex, that steal dreams for power. But I also learned we can fight back, with truth, community, and a song that won't be silenced. Looking out at the crowd, I saw Aisha flown in by the foundation, her eyes bright with possibility. I'd given her a stage, just as Memphis gave me mine. If you were in my shoes, facing bias assumptions, and a world that overlooks genius in unexpected places, how would you fight for your truth? Would you find allies, build a movement, or share your gift to lift others, ensuring the best outcome for all? The ceremony ended, but my work didn't. Back in Memphis, I walked Beale Street with Uncle Clarence, his step stronger, our duplex alive with workshop plans. The PBS crew filmed kids solving equations to soul beats, their laughter a new melody. Hensley's shadow lingered, but my light was brighter. I'd turned math into music, racism into resistance, and a girl from Soulsville into a voice for change. My song wasn't just mine, it was for every kid, every dreamer, every genius waiting to be heard.